show.
The Black woman created this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sundays with the Cherry on Top. I am your host, Cherry. And I want to just let you guys know, this is my season finale, and I have an exciting guest for you guys coming up, and I can't wait to introduce her to the world. Some of you guys will know her. Some of you guys will just be meeting her for the first time. And it's going to be a really good discussion before we sign off for the holidays. And then, and I'll bring some new and exciting guests with, for next year in January 2021 after the new year. And I probably after the inauguration, because, my nerves. I'm just like, can we get through this, please, Lord? Hallelujah. So we'll see, right? Amen. But definitely in January, but I have to decide on a date, and I have some guests in mind. So with that said, I want to say again, don't forget to find me on social media. You see it down there in the my ticker down there, which I love. And you follow me over the holidays. I will, repost some past interviews, some cool snippets, some cool cherry picks, and some good ideas for the cherry pick for holiday shopping, Black owned. So let's support the Black owned businesses out there. Amen. And so I will be posting some of those over the holiday break. So I really won't be gone, but I will, I'll be in your phone every once in a while. We'll say it that way. You guys know how I like to do fun facts with my guests before I bring them on, right? So every show, I like to dig into people's background in their life because some of my guests I know, but then I always discover something new about them. Like a fun fact for ChiCi that I discovered is that she was doing theater in college, okay, and then she was like, "Nope, this is not for me. I'm changing my mind," and that led her to the road of being an artist in a different way. But I didn't even know that about her, so it was really fun to find out. I was like, let me find out if she acted. I wanted to see some videos of her on stage. Let me see if I can find some, but I couldn't find anything. So I was like, dang, before social media probably, but so that's a fun fact about her. And a fun fact about ChiCi that you guys may not know is that she and I produced together. We've been producing partners for years. I want to say like 5 or 6 years. We produced the Now Africa Playwrights Festival, and we'll talk more about that in the interview, but I'm the executive producer of that organization, and we produce together. And so she's like my sister. We love hard, we fight hard, all of that. We're very close in that way, and you get to know each other when you're producing. And so we got to know each other pretty fast, and that's a fun fact about her. And the last fun fact I want to say is that she loves karaoke. This woman loves some damn karaoke. Can I tell you, every time before COVID, every time I looked at my phone, she was texting me, inviting me to do some karaoke. And I was always like, no. But I think after COVID, I'm going to go because I want to hear her sing and see what her karaoke choice go-to song is. But I didn't know that about her until over the years getting to know her, that karaoke is her thing. And I'm just like, ugh. Enough with the karaoke already. But anyway, and I love her. But we have these conversations, and it's the same thing. Hey, girl, you want to do karaoke? I'm like, no, I don't want to do karaoke. And then we move on. But with that said, I just want to bring on my girl, ChiChi Anyanwu. And yes, and we're going to have some good time. So everybody, welcome ChiCi. ChiCi, yay. Hello, hi, honey. How are you?
I'm so glad to be here. I feel like we've been going back and forth for so long about like when am I going to do an interview, what the dates are going to be. So I love that we're actually like finally doing this. So
actually making it happen. But you were out there. You were out there starting your own business, which we'll get into later. But yes, every time, for those who don't know, every time I would reach out to her to say, hey, be a guest on the show, she was unavailable, which is fine because she's been doing great things. But I'm so glad that we were able to make it work. And with that said, before I get into the interview, I really like to do a check-in with my guests. How are you feeling just with everything happening in the world? Where are you right now? We have a new vice president, and we have a new president-elect, and they'll be sworn in January, fingers crossed. How are you feeling right now with everything?
I feel like I'm feeling good. I feel like me, along with everyone else, we're all able to kind of sleep a little bit more deeply now, because now that we have a new president and an amazing vice president, we can we can chill out a little bit, because we know that they're going to bring us back together. I feel like a lot of times we've been feeling like there's so much division in the world. So I feel like this is like the positive change that we needed during this time. So I'm feeling good about that. But I will say I have been doing like a fast from the news. So yesterday I started listening to the news again, and I was talking to my sister about like, oh, are we ready to do Mexico for my birthday? And after listening to the news, I'm just like, you know what? I think I should like chill out and stay my butt at home and not be so quick to travel, because there's so many, new, numbers in terms of the virus. All the numbers are just not safe for us to be traveling. So
I'm glad you're not traveling. So I would have texted you or had a phone call with you if I found out you was traveling during the time. We would have had a meeting. I would have been like, we have to have a briefing on this, because I just posted a picture of a flight attendants crew in hazmat suits. They're walking through the airport and flying planes in hazmat suits. So if they're in hazmat suits, I'm like, that's a good indication to stay home.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it was just kind of like a rude awakening that I just needed to be like, okay, let's chill out. Let me do something chill at home with my parents in Pennsylvania and get a little cake and not feel the need to always like go up and go somewhere. I'm always moving and shaking, but like, let me chill out. So it was a rude reminder that I needed to like calm down and not feel like I have to always do something. So it was cool.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. So with that said, about being in the middle of this COVID, we're in the middle of the pandemic, as we just established, and you decided to start your own talent management company, which is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to do this during the pandemic, during this time?
Well, I will say, like, before the pandemic happened, I was actually in the process of looking for other jobs. Like, I've been, we've been having this conversation for the last year or 2 years, Cherry. I've been trying to get out of the company that I was with for a long time.
Yeah.
But I was having, like, getting into that kind of like, almost like getting close to certain jobs, but for whatever reason, it just didn't land my way. When you're working in representation, there's just a lot of competition. You're going up against people who may have, years of experiences. They may be coming from like those fancier agencies or management companies. So I was just having trouble landing something. And during the epidemic, I lost my job sometime in like, I think it was maybe the second week of March. I got an email from my former boss saying that like, unfortunately, she had to let me go because of COVID. She couldn't afford to, keep me on salary. And I had a conversation with my sister, and I basically was just like, should I wait? Do you think it'd be better for me to wait and just see what happens in terms of the industry, see if anyone's going to be hiring? And even after I talked to other like agent and manager friends, everyone was telling me that people were either getting laid off, they were getting furloughed, and it was going to be a while until anyone was going to be hiring, because everyone was losing money, because once theater was shut down, that was basically what was paying a lot of people's rent. Like I forgot how much power theater has in the industry in terms of like all the people who were employed on Broadway, all the people who were on tours, because there's only a small percentage of people who are like consistently working in television and film, but theater really is like the main pulse of the industry in terms of like making a lot of these companies money. It really comes down to theater, especially for the smaller companies. So I talked to my sister in terms of like, does this make sense? Like, could I do this? Like, I was just trying to figure out, like, I honestly didn't know if I could even do it. And it came down to, let me just like take a leap of faith. Let me just try to do it so I can at least like say that, hey, I tried to do something. And then if I fail, I fail. But she really kind of helped to give me that support that I needed in terms of, hey, if you need an extra $5,000, I can help invest. And let's like reach out to like our family and friends and do like a fundraiser. So I did a fundraiser, and the fundraiser was kind of that like added like insurance that I needed to be like, okay, let me raise a certain amount of money. And once I raise this money, this will kind of give me that capital that I need. Because when you start a business, you have to, open up an LLC with money. You have to pay for certain software documentation. You have to do X, Y, Z. So many other funds that people don't think about when they're starting a company that I needed as I was raising money. So I just kind of decided to just go for it, because it really was going to be a long time in terms of when anyone was going to be hiring anyway. So I just, took a chance and just did it basically.
And so with that said, because I think this is an amazing thing, how are you feeling now that you're in it? Like, it's happened, you did the fundraiser. American Express, you won a grant with them, you know, the 100 for 100 supporting Black businesses. And now that you're actually doing it and the engine is moving, how are you feeling? Surreal about it? Or you feel like, I can't believe this is happening type thing?
Yeah, I feel like everything happens for a reason. So I was able to kind of like sit down and just think about how far I've come, because I thought about like, I don't think I would have gotten this grant. I don't think I would have raised the kind of money that I raised if it wasn't for getting laid off. If it wasn't for opening a company during the pandemic. I feel like people have been very generous in terms of like supporting Black businesses. That's been the main conversation happening now in terms of like, we got to support everything Black, right? So I feel like, you know, this is the perfect timing to do what I needed to do as an entrepreneur. And it was great to have that support for my family, for my community. And it kind of gave me that kind of reassurance that like, okay, I feel like I'm finally on the right track. Like all these things are happening and this is like, it was meant to be, basically, you know?
Yes, it was. And I'm going to get emotional and start crying because as long as I've known you, how many times, you know this, we've always said, you need to be owning your own business. You need to be your own talent manager, like years. Yeah. And so when I saw that you were finally doing it, I know, I used to get on you all the time. And when I saw that you were doing it and it's happening, I get so emotional because we've been talking about this for years, like the talent that you have, the eye that you have, finding actors and artists, and also too, how many Black women talent managers are there in our business, right? And so that alone is a whole dissertation we got to write on why there's not that many casting directors and agents, you know, and talent managers in our business, and we need more of them. So for you to smash the glass ceiling that way, it's just so moving and so inspirational. And so I just want to say I commend you and I'm proud of you. And I'm so glad you got the courage to do it, because that is not an easy thing to do, especially during this time. So I just want to say that with so much love, because you know how much I love you and adore you. And I'm so glad that you did it. And like, you know, maybe 5 years from now, I'm going to be like, yo, you want to be my manager? No, no, I love the manager I love. I don't want him looking at me like, what's going on?
He's amazing. He's actually one of the people that I met with. I did a virtual meeting with him and he really helped, you know, give me some resources and he helped me out. He's great. You're in good hands.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I told him that you said that, and he was like, "That means you're never leaving." I'm like, "Yes, Chris, I'm never leaving. Yeah, it's okay, it's good." So with that said, I want to go on to my next question, because during this time, we have, you know, the business has been shut down. No theater, like you were saying earlier. No, no film and TV on set. No one's shooting, and so. Now that if things are starting to slowly come back, TV starting to come back, film starting to come back, theater will be later. What can you give actors? What advice can you give the actors during this time that can be done virtually? Because a lot of auditions are happening on Zoom, live, a lot of self-tapings. What are some advice you can give us now that things are starting to happen, but there is a change, like we're not doing things in person as far as auditions? What can an actor do to be set up for success in this new era of auditioning?
I think the first thing is making sure that you have a good self-tape set up. I've noticed when we were first doing self-tapes, a lot of actors didn't really have like the plain walls or like the backdrops. Sometimes you have like a blue-black backdrop. They didn't have the proper lighting. And I'm fine with people taping, let's say on their, you know, cell phone or their laptop, as long as it's steady. Because sometimes it's like you can tell when something's not steady or something's shaky. So it took a while for some of the actors who weren't used to doing self-tape to really have that like set up together. So the first thing in terms of like just making sure that you have that like the lighting on point, you know, making sure that you have the backdrop so you're ready for the self-tapes, so they can also like look clear and look professional for the casting directors. Because the casting directors are sending all these self-tapes to producers and directors, and you just want to make sure that the quality is strong. Because even a lot of times, you know, of course, acting is important to, you know, make sure you're brushing up on your acting and your coaching. But I also feel like making sure that you also put out those quality tapes. I remember there was something that was going viral this week. There was an actor who was in a Zoom casting, and the director was talking trash about him.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, that director saying like, oh, you know, these poor people in their small apartments and the TV. And I remember thinking about like, oh, no one should actually know what your apartment looks like when you're auditioning. Like, you need to have a clear wall, and you need to have a background. No one should be seeing your television, you know, or anything in the background. So really making sure that the focus is going to be on you as an actor and not what's everything that's happening in the background, right? So that's just kind of another example in terms of like how you're going in and how you're presenting yourself. So that's something that's very important. And even with the classes, there's a lot of casting directors, a lot of teachers that are doing virtual classes. So I'm always big on like, take a scene study class, take an on-camera class, do coaching. Like if you have a series regular coming up, or if you have like the lead in the film, anything that's like a big project that you think that's going to require some help on. I'm a big fan of going out and seeking help and doing coaching. And then also make sure your headshots are up to date. A couple of times I would see some of my clients, they'll change their hair. I'm like, oh, your hair does not look anything like your headshot. So making sure that you're staying up to date in terms of your look. Headshot should always be up to date. Or even if you do change your look, let your representation know. I feel like now is the most important time in terms of communication. Let us know when you're booked out. Like even though everything's happening via self tapes, there are certain times when you're not going to be around. I just found out this week one of my clients had like major dental surgery. So I'm like, oh, that was good to know because he had all these auditions coming up. So now I have to like reschedule or cancel some of the auditions because he's going to be healing, right? So definitely making sure that you're communicating with your reps and letting them know what's happening. A lot of people are also out of the country now. So for people who are out of the country or out of the state, just keep in mind, if you notice that auditions are slowing up because of COVID, casting directors are acting representation where your client is located. So normally I would be able to pitch my clients for, even though they're based in New York, I'd be able to pitch them for things in LA, in Atlanta. But now because of everything that's happening, there's a lot more auditions that are just looking for local hires, people who are actually in the state. So if you are traveling, just kind of communicate with your representation where you're going, because sometimes it's going to make or break certain auditions in terms of who's getting brought in for certain things. That's something for people to know, what people are discussing now. So, communication, of course, is key. And also, if you're someone who also always thought about writing, just start writing. Don't wait for us to, give you things to do. Just be proactive, be positive, and feel free to also send pages to your representation. Like if you are working on a play and you need feedback, send those pages to your reps to see if they have any notes on that, or invite us to Zoom readings. If you're doing any type of like Zoom performances, like I've been going to a lot of Zoom performances. So keep us in the know in terms of like what things you're participating in during this time, so we can just, get familiar with what you're working on. Because sometimes it's been a while since I've actually like seen my performers do anything, especially do things on stage. So if there's more opportunities for me to get more familiar with what you can do, that's going to make me more excited to work with you, so it's another thing to be thinking about.
Those are all good. I have a couple of things. I was like, well, let me send an email to my manager. I'm like, wait a minute. No, that's all good. So is this a good time for actors who don't have representation, for all the things that you said, because you just dropped some gems, but is this a good time for actors to look for agents and managers for representation? Because I know things are slowing down, and like you said, there's actors who are doing a lot of Zoom readings and virtual readings and things like that. But what are some things that actors and artists can do to make your job easier, for the ones that do have representation? What can they do? Like, I know you said a lot of those things that you said, but what can they do if they're not? I guess the question would be, what can they do if they don't have representation? Because everything you said was great about when they do have representation. But if I'm somebody who doesn't have a manager or an agent, would this be the perfect time to look for something, or should we wait because nothing's really happening?
Well, honestly, it really just depends on the person. It depends on, it's almost like politics sometimes. It's very much like, what's your resume? What's your experience? What's your reel? What does your IMDb page look like? I just realized like IMDb page is a big thing in terms of like star meter. This one time I saw like a breakdown saying that only look at people who have like something random, like a random number, like 50,000 or more star meter, and with star meter, it's very much like, who are people talking about? So the lower your star meter on IMDb Pro, the better, because that means you're like, you're working on projects that people are clicking on and people are trying to find out about you. So it really depends on the actor, because sometimes I'll hear from people saying now's not a good time because a lot of people's clients aren't working. So if they're bringing on more clients, it's going to take away from their current clients, right? Because it's a little bit slower. But I heard from other people saying, I'm only looking for diversity clients right now. Like I'm only looking for people of color, which is ironic because also it was coming from a white manager saying, I don't want any more white clients right now.
Amen.
then my clients are not going in. So it was so fascinating because she actually asked me if I had some recommendations, and that happens too. Like, even though I'm not necessarily actively looking for clients, I'll refer people. Like, if someone has a strong reel or a strong resume and has a great look, I'll send it over to like an agent or manager friend of mine. Be like, hey, are you looking for new people? This person shows promise. And it's also, it's a very small world. So like, you never know, even though you're not necessarily right for someone, someone could see something in you and they'll send you over to like a colleague or a friend. Like we're all kind of, in this together. We have these strong relationships and we all kind of like share information. So you never know, when you're submitting. And I will say that the first thing you need to do is, of course, get an acting reel together. Because a lot of times I remember I saw an acting reel from a client and you could tell it was something that like they kind of put together and it was kind of like thrown together, but make sure it's like a professional acting reel, whether it's you spending money at Real Arc. Real Arc basically puts together professional acting reels. They give you sides, they give you a scene partner, and they make it look all pretty and fancy like a television show or film. If you have the resources, I definitely recommend spending money on Real Art. If you don't necessarily have the finances or resources, you can put together scenes, but have a friend who has a high quality iPhone or has a fancy camera, and you can just record scenes from like a television show or from, a theater scene. But make sure it's not something that looks like, oh, this person did not put any thought behind this, or the quality is not good. Like, still have those things that we talked about in terms of like lighting, in terms of a plain background. Think of it as like a self-tape, but put together like 2 or 3 scenes that really shows us what you can do. And then also make sure that your resume is up to date. You'd be surprised how people send things and like their resume, there's no like new current projects on it. It's just kind of like an old resume. So make sure your resume is up to date. If you have a website, make sure your website's up to date. Same thing with headshots. Sometimes people don't necessarily look like their headshots because maybe their headshots are like 5 years old. So anytime you're approaching representation, just make sure you have all those things in order before you even approach. And if you're someone who doesn't necessarily have an acting reel, I would get that together, honestly, before you approach representation, because it's going to be hard for us to know what you can do if we haven't seen you on stage or we haven't seen you on television. Of course, it's different in terms of like, I'm kind of speaking more about developmental clients, but people who might be a little more seasoned, maybe they have some Broadway credits, maybe they've done some guest stars on television. There's some flexibility in that in terms of like, if your acting reel is up to date, because we've seen that, oh, your resume shows us that you have experience on television, film, you've done some Broadway. But for people who are more developmental, I think that acting reel is definitely very important in reaching out to folks.
No, see, this is all really good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
this is.
Timing,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would just think with the timing, sometimes it's good to wait maybe after pilot season, because pilot season is usually when it's a little bit slower, or even before pilot season. So maybe I would say if you're reaching out to representation, think about maybe January in terms of general meetings. Right now, we're all in like holiday mode. So Thanksgiving's coming up, Christmas is coming up. This might not necessarily be the best time to reach out to folks. I think we'll have honestly a better sense of what the industry's gonna look like when we find out about this vaccine and when we find out when theaters coming back. Because once we'll know like when theaters come back and the vaccine actually works in the new year, I think that will definitely change a lot of people's strategy in terms of like how many clients to bring on, because it just really depends what the industry looks like.
Okay, this is all good. This all makes sense to me, and this is. Thank you for sharing all of this. And so another question, it triggers a question that I have as far as what for your management company, why do you sign a client? Why do you sign an actor, an artist? What do you look for? Because like you were saying, like somebody who has a lot of credits or Broadway or guest star, co-star, have been a series regular. I can understand, but if they don't have that experience, but you see their talent, where do you find it, right? Or what makes you go, yes, I want to sign this person on, even if they don't have all these credits?
Well, yeah, there's one I think the person that I brought on, I guess most recently a few months ago, she actually she didn't even graduate school yet. She's a senior in college, but I would say when she reached out, I could tell she did her research. She like looked me up. She literally knew that I was part of Now Africa Playwriting Festival. She knew that my sister was an award-winning playwright. Like, and that's one of those things like, oh, it's great to also have someone also do the research and like get to know who I am as a person too, right? And also she had an acting reel. Like a lot of kids when they're graduating school, they don't have acting reels. It takes them a while to put that together. This girl who's like 21 years old, she had an acting reel. She had a website. She also had 4 plays that she's written. So she just really put together, because I also look for people who also will like work as hard as I do. Like I'm someone that like I'm a workaholic. Like I'm gonna work through the night.
Yes, you are.
Like, whoever
Yes, you are.
Like who am I willing to lose sleep for? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I want the kind of clients who have the kind of same type of hustle. Of course, talent is great. Talent's a given. You want to look for someone who has that like star quality. But I also look for people who have that like strong work ethic. Because a couple of times, I'll get clients who, like I'll get people who submit to actors who submit to me, but they just don't have all their things together. You know what I mean? They'll submit to me asking about reputation, but they don't have an acting role put together, or they don't necessarily have an up-to-date headshot, or this is missing, So those are little things that I notice that like I kind of want someone who's a little bit, more sharper about the industry. And even when you meet clients, I love people who've also kind of like nerds about the industry. They know the kind of writers that they want to work with. They know the television shows that they can see themselves on, and someone who has a good sense of who they are as an actor. Because that also makes our job a little bit easier, because I know that, so-and-so is obsessed with power. So anytime all these power spin-off television shows, I got to make sure I'm pitching him a little bit harder for this, because he wants to get seen for all those power spin-off shows. Or I know that so-and-so is a sci-fi geek, so I got to get them in for Star Trek or any of these like, sci-fi shows, So someone who's just very like knowledgeable about like how they see themselves in the industry, that's really important to me. Because I always ask people like, what are your top favorite shows? What are your top who are your top writers? Who are the directors that you're fans of? So I ask them these kind of questions so I can get a sense in terms of like what they know in the industry and how they see themselves. So I definitely look for someone who's also easy to talk to. Like nice, I think in the past I've worked with people through that other company who, they had the biggest egos, or like every single time I would give them any type of critique, it was like an argument, So I really want to work with people who also I can connect with on a basic human level, and not feel like we're always like, arguing over like little things, or, I give them one critique and it's the end of the world. Like I really want someone who can also like take really good notes, or, sometimes I'll like get self-tapes from clients, and someone who's flexible. Someone like I'll tell them, actually, like I feel like, some of these choices could be stronger. Do you mind sending another take? So making sure someone also has that flexibility, as opposed to like, I think this take is great, so I don't like, I want to see another take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get to feel people's personality as you talk to them in the meeting, as you talk to them about how they see themselves in the industry. And even when you're working people, I like to, before I sign with folks, I just like to do the freelancing thing, because I feel like when you're freelancing, it's almost like you're dating. You get a feel in terms of how they communicate. You get a feel, a sense of how they audition. And once you sign with them, that's when you're really ready to make that commitment, because you know that you guys were able to kind of build something over the first like 3 to 6 months, and you want to sign that contract deal with them. But it takes me a while to like sign right away. I just like to get to know people first before I initially sign. But I think not everyone thinks that way. I think some people want to like sign and lock people in, but I really want to get a feel in terms of what people can really do, because sometimes some people are really great at auditioning, and then when they get cast, it's like it's a whole nother thing. You know what I mean? Or like maybe they're difficult in the rehearsal process, but they're a great auditioning. So you get a feel that the longer you work with people, you get a feel in terms of like how they are as an actor and how their work ethic is. So it takes some time to get to know that.
Nice. This is all good. Yes. For those who are watching and who will watch this later, these are all good gems. Good. So I want to segue into the producing part of you. You're the creative marketing producer for Now Africa. And the question I have for you is, why this organization, and why is it important to you, and why do you feel it's needed?
Yeah, I feel like it's needed now, even more so than ever, because I think a lot of people, especially Black writers, a lot of people are looking for resources, or they need support. So I feel like with the Now Africa Playwriting Festival, we gave a platform to writers from the African diaspora, and we let them showcase themselves as up and coming writers too. There's a lot of people that we also like started, not gonna say started their careers, but we really like gave them that like platform, gave them that exposure that maybe they didn't have when they first got produced off Broadway. Like we worked with a lot of great playwrights like Anyanwu. We work with, Jocelyn Bio. We work with, of course, Mpaniso Ndofia, who's also a producer. So a lot of these playwrights who are now having great off-Broadway runs and potential Broadway shows, we gave them that platform to really be seen and to really like support their work. So I think it's just another example in terms of like, we need more of these type of festivals where folks can be showcased. And I'm hoping now, honestly, with everything that's happening in terms of like streaming, I'm hoping with us, you know, I know everyone's kind of busy, but like I would love for us to do something in terms of like put together some type of like streaming reading or some type of like event with Now Africa, because people are still asking me about like, what's happening in Africa? What's happening in Africa? I'm like, everyone's busy right now. So people will be back soon. I don't know.
I mean, it's so amazing where we started with Now Africa and like how we started in this room with Ngozi, for those who don't know, with Now Africa that ChiChi and I produced together with. And Ngozi was just like, I wrote this piece and I just want to put it on. And we were like, okay, let's do it. And then bam. And then that's just how we started to just get into producing and creating this Now Africa Playwriting Festival. How did you get into the marketing aspect of everything that you do? Is it just something that you were just like, I'm good at this, I want to do it?
It's something that I had a knack for. I did like a PR internship in college with the Pittsburgh Public Theater. And I interned for a Black theater company called the Country Repertory Theater. So I ended up doing all this marketing for them. Like when I think Facebook started when I was either a sophomore or junior in college. And I really used Facebook as a way to kind of promote all the plays that the theater had did. And I've always kind of just, you know, I've always loved to like showcase and publicize Black theater. That's always been my thing since I was in college, because I think when I was in college, I finally discovered Black theater when I was in college. And where we were from, me and my sister, the only Black show we did was like Once on This Island. And, you know, Once on This Island is not really, it has Black people in it, but it's not really a Black show. It's not biased. So it wasn't until I got to college that like I really discovered all these amazing, brilliant Black playwrights. And I was, you know, like I finally got a chance to read all the August Wilson plays. And I found out about August Wilson and Rob Penny and, you know, all these folks that I didn't learn about when I was in high school. So I kind of like, you know, even after I graduated, when I came to New York, I was just seeking, you know, everything Black theater. Like I remember I tried to reach out to New Federal Theater. Unfortunately, no one returned my email. But well,
they will now. They will now. They will now.
All the Black theater companies in New York, no one returned my email. But I made sure I was going to be a patron and support Black theater, because, you know, a lot of places don't unfortunately have resources. You know, who knows who's checking the email, whatever the case is. But I made a point to like be a patron and to eventually like work with some theater companies to help do some marketing and help do these like audience Black theater nights, basically. So I've always just had a passion for supporting Black theater and, you know, supporting having our stories be showcased, you know, out there. So that's something that's always been important to me.
I love this. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our interview, because, you know, like these things are in and out. I'm going to ask you about your cherry pick. At the end of each interview, I like to ask my guests about a cherry pick. And so what would your cherry pick be?
I love all things Jay Shetty. I'm obsessed with him. I listen to his podcast every day on purpose. His podcast is called On Purpose. And then I love his book, Think Like a Monk. I think I listen to the audiobook probably like almost every other day. You just need those constant reminders about health and wellness and how it's really important to not like lead in fear. I think a lot of things that I did in my career was based off of like trying to find security. And sometimes it's okay to be, you know, fearful and to take that next step in your career. You know, not everything is promised. So even doing everything that happened in terms of the pandemic, it was kind of just like a rude awakening that like, I'm getting older, life is short, and it's like basically now or never to do the kind of things that I want to do in my life before I'm like, you know, old and gray and looking back like, oh, I wish I would have did this, but I don't want to like live my life in regret. So that book kind of really reinforces, you know, all the things that you could be doing to live in your purpose and to take that next step and to not feel like, you know, you're letting your anxiety and your fear getting the best of you. So just a great reminder for me to really always be true to myself, always live my purpose. So I love me some Jay Shetty.
Okay. I didn't, and it's so funny because I never really heard of him until you picked him. And so then I saw that he was on the Red Table Talk with Jada. He's like everywhere. So I was like, let me look more into him. And what you're saying makes sense, you know, because a lot, even myself, like I have so much anxiety and I have to always do my breathing techniques and face my fears and talk myself off the ledge with my fears. So anything to help with that, I'm down to listen to. So I will definitely check him out. So that's it. Oh my gosh. It was wait, yeah, what were you gonna say?
Did you watch the Red Table Talk with Will Smith today, or did you watch it this week?
I watched it afterwards because I saw. Yeah, no, I watched it afterwards because I saw the HBO special, which I cried through. I cried through that whole thing. And the Janet Hubert and Will Smith, I cried through the whole thing because I just, I say this all the time, especially to the men in my life who I love. I say it with love, is that, you know, the way Black women are treated, the way we're looked at, the way we're at the bottom, and the way this business treats us. And just to see a Black man embracing a Black woman and admitting that where he's wrong is so refreshing. My heart burst open. I'm not used to having that a lot in my life. Like, you know, having the men in my life to just sit down and say, listen, I was wrong. This is what we want to talk about. And like, you know, and we're all working towards that with each other because we all come from a place of hurt. We all have our triggers. And so I just boo-hooed through the whole thing. And then I saw the Red Table Talk and I boo-hooed through all of that because for Will Smith to talk about where his behavior came from and to talk about how he recognized how he was wrong and that he was acting out of fear because he wanted her to like him so much. I was just like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to watch this. I was like, oh my God. You know, because we don't see it. We always see the women doing the work, but seeing the Black men do the work in this way, I was like, thank you. It's needed. We need it.
Yeah. And even just thinking about like, with me personally, like sometimes I would come into like my past job in like an attitude and people always be like, what's going on with her? Like people would react to me in a certain way based on the kind of energy that I bring in the room. And people didn't know if I was like going through stress, like I could have been having a bad morning. So I also just thought about in terms of just the way, in terms of like what energy we bring into the room. Not saying we always have to be happy-go-lucky and excited to see everyone, but sometimes we do kind of, we as strong Black women, we do kind of like naturally intimidate certain energies, right? So I also do think that on the flip side, we also need to be aware that like, we're also maybe like intimidated because of how we're like walking into certain spaces too. Or sometimes with me, like I'll hold a grudge and I didn't even know that I held a grudge with someone because like all my interaction will be like, oh, well, that person seems like they're kind of rude to me, but like that person could be having a bad day, you know, like it's not actually always about us, right?
Yeah,
it's really about just leading more in kindness and to really like just be more respectful of what people are going through and not feel like it's all about you, right? Because they're both going through things at the time, right? I didn't know that Will Smith was bankrupt. I had no idea he was like owing the tax folks $2 million. Like I had no idea, right?
Yeah,
so
you see both sides. You see both sides of how they're both going through things. You know, she was going things behind the scenes with her marriage and having a baby and everything. But and the thing is, like, I was mad at him too. Like, you know, I love the Smiths, but seeing that episode made me realize that I was holding on. I was angry at him too because I was like, you done ruined this Black woman's career. She's been around and she's amazing and she's this amazing talent and she can't get work. And you hear the people like Monique, you hear people like Janet, you hear people, a lot of Black women, even in our circles, talk about how they get deemed difficult when they speak up for themselves. And I'm like, she's not being difficult. She's saying what she needs to say. And the fact that she said that in the interview, that when she asked him, she's like, you know what it's like when you deem a Black woman as difficult in Hollywood, right? And I was like, see? And I was like, that's it right there. It's like, I can't tell you how many shows I've been in with white men and I've seen them tear up a set or kick a chair or curse out the director and they still in the show. And I was like, if that was me, if I kicked a chair or curse out the director, there's no way I would get a job. So I thought it was all beautiful. And Shirley in the comments is saying that Janet needs to get paid. Janet Hubert needs to get paid. Will Smith needs to cut her a check, okay?
No, seriously, I have a feeling for her to even do that interview. Someone gave her some money to even show up, I think.
Well, I hope he does more. Like, I think this is the beginning of the healing, and I can't wait to see if they do work together. There's a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reboot coming. Maybe she'll be part of the reboot, you know, or maybe Hollywood now will start giving her jobs. Like, I don't know, but I do feel like there is a part of me that needs to be like, you need to cut her a check. You need to cut her a check. But we'll see what happens. I think we're going to see more of her, and I want this to be a healing journey for her because the pain that she was talking through, I just cried because I was like, I recognize that pain, even though that hasn't directly happened to me. I recognize the pain of a Black woman being misunderstood. Like, we're always misunderstood. Like, everything we say has to be an issue, but it's like no one asks, "How you doing? Where's that coming from?" You know. So I cried through the whole thing.
Exactly.
Anyway, listen. With that said, I'm gonna let you go, and I love you. I'm so glad that you were able. I'm so glad that you were able to be here and join me. And this won't be. We'll do a part 2 once we're back after COVID, after the vaccine, and the business starts to open up. I want to have you come back, and you can talk about what actors can do with the new normal, right? So I would love to have you back. So yeah, but thank you so much, guys. Everybody, wave goodbye to ChiChi. Yay! Thank you for coming on, ChiChi. Yay, baby! So glad to have you guys. That was a good conversation. I know there was a little issue with the sound in some areas, and ChiChi had informed us earlier that she was dealing with some sound things on her end, and so hopefully you were able to hear, because I heard a lot and most of the chunk of what she was saying, but I just want to let you know that what was going on was a little technical difficulties, but I definitely didn't want to say to reschedule the interview. Like, I'm glad that I was excited that she was able to come on. So with that said, this is the season finale. So again, like I said in the opening, the holidays are coming up. Even ChiChi said the business is on holiday break. So that's why I'm going to be on holiday break. My producer, Bjorn, we're going to be on holiday break, and we're going to debrief, and we're going to talk about what we can do for the next season, how we can just, each season just keep topping it and just making it just more accessible and better and more fun for everybody. Feedback is great. If you want to email us, that's great too. But we'll be back in January. I eventually will give you the date of when we decide when that's going to be. And don't forget, social media. You can follow me on Sundays with Cherry on Twitter, Sundays with the Cherry on Top on Instagram. I will be posting some past interviews, some snippets of good conversation, like that Black Girl Magic conversation ChiChi and I just had. That's going to be a clip, okay? Black women need to be heard. That's going to be a clip. I already see it now. And so before I leave, don't forget about the Georgia runoff, right? We're going to do Georgia runoff. I'm going to talk about Georgia until Warnock and a soft win. We need to get them in that Senate. Like I said, the last episode, Georgia hasn't had a Democratic senator since 2005. So it's about time that we just turn those seats over. And so I want all hands on deck, whatever you can do to get the word out. Post about Georgia, follow these two men on social media, retweet their videos, let's get them in the Senate, because all the changes that we want to see are not going to happen if Mitch McConnell is allowed to block everything we want, right? There's the George Floyd Policing Act sitting on his desk that's been sitting there for over 180 days that Kamala Harris wrote, okay, and blocked, not on the floor to be voted on, right? There's so many things that's sitting on this man's desk that we want that have not been voted on because we don't have the Senate. Now, if we get these two men in here, we can vote. And if there's a tie, Kamala Harris gets to do the tiebreaker, which gives her even more power. Our MVP gets more power. So let's get Georgia all hands on deck. So voter registration deadline, December 7th. They're going to be doing early voting for 3 weeks. So December 14th, you can start voting early. Their election day is January 5th, 2021. You can vote by mail. So go make sure you get your absentee ballot. You can do georgia.gov/vote absentee, because I know everything is surging right now with the COVID and some people may not want to go out. And if you want to volunteer by getting the word out, writing notes, sending letters, go to georgiademocrat.org and get your butt in there and help out. Because listen, I'm tired of having all these policies sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk because he's the majority leader. We need to make him a minority, and we need to get a new Senate majority leader in there so we can get all these things passed, and we can get some stimulus money, and people can feed themselves, and people can get their health care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, with that said, I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me this whole time. I can't wait to bring back a new season for you. I'm in January, and that's it. Georgia, 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 all hands on deck. Guys, thank you. Bye.
Holla.